Before we dive into this fight card, let me tell you something that most fans have completely missed. Tonight's matchups aren't just random, they're part of a bigger setup that could reshape 3 different weight classes. One fighter got saved by a failed drug test, another came in overweight on purpose, and the main event might end up deciding the next superstar at 140. This isn't just another boxing card, this is the start of a major power shift. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's your boy Fenin, and today we're diving straight into the 140-pound division. We've got Isaac Cruz taking on Lamont Roach in a big PBC fight card, and I'm breaking down the entire event. We're talking matchups, predictions, and why each fight matters. So let's jump right into it. This card is bringing back that real, classic boxing energy. Alongside Cruz vs. Roach, we've also got Stephen Fulton Jr. facing O'Shaquie Foster, which makes this lineup even stronger. Honestly, with the fights we're getting, it's almost impossible for this card not to deliver. I'm grabbing the pay-per-view myself, and I'll tell you exactly who I think will win and why. Before we get too deep into it, though, welcome back. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss a new video. And to everyone who's been supporting the channel for a long time, thank you. Thank you for sharing, hyping the videos, and dropping super thanks. It really means a lot. Now let's get into why this card is so important. This marks the return of PBC on Amazon Prime, and it looks like the first of many new events heading our way. It's great to see them back in action, especially returning to San Antonio, Texas, where boxing always gets massive energy from the crowd. Moving deeper into the lineup, one fight that really stands out to me is Jesus Ramos vs. Shane Mosley Jr. on paper, and from what we've seen recently, this matchup feels like a moment where Ramos can re-establish himself and remind everyone why so many fans believed he was going to be one of the breakout stars at 154. And honestly, the more I think about this fight, the more confident I am in saying that Ramos should come out with a clear win. Now, that isn't meant to take anything away from Shane Mosley Jr., he deserves credit. Over the last couple of years, Mosley Jr. has been putting in real work and showing noticeable improvement. His confidence has gone up, his timing looks better, and he's been building momentum through consistent performances. You can see that he's becoming more comfortable in the ring and more settled in his style. But even with all that progress, when you compare the tools, the attributes, and the overall presence that each fighter brings, Ramos still stands out as the more complete, more dangerous fighter. The first thing that always jumps off the screen when you watch Jesus Ramos is his pressure style. He's not careless, he's not wild, and he's not one of those guys who rushes forward without thinking. His pressure is calculated. He walks you down with patience and discipline, cutting off the ring in a way that's almost quiet at first until suddenly you realize you've run out of space and he's right in your chest. That kind of pressure breaks fighters down. It forces them into mistakes and takes away their ability to fight at their preferred pace. Then there's his size and physical strength. Ramos is one of those fighters who looks like he was built for this weight class. He's big, he's strong, and he carries his power through all 12 rounds. When he lands to the body, you can hear the thud through the TV. When he throws combinations, there's weight behind every shot. Mosley Jr. is tough, don't get me wrong, but dealing with that kind of physicality over the course of a fight is a different challenge entirely. Ramos also has experience against higher-level competition Mosley Jr. hasn't had in the same way. Even though Ramos is still young, he's been thrown into deep waters early in his career, and he's handled himself well. He's been on big stages, fought in meaningful matchups, and faced opponents who came to win, not just to survive. Those experiences matter, especially when fights start getting physical and fighters need to make adjustments under pressure. Now, of course, the big talking point with Ramos is that loss to Erickson Lubin. People still bring it up because, for many fans, it was shocking. I'm a Lubin fan myself, so I could understand how Lubin outpointed him. Lubin boxed smart, stayed composed, and executed a strategy that suited him perfectly. But even with that being the case, the interesting thing is how the damage added up throughout the fight. Ramos was consistently landing heavier shots. He was the one making Lubin uncomfortable. If you were scoring the fight strictly off who looked like they were doing more physical harm, Ramos probably would have been ahead. And that's why I say in an old-school 15-round fight, the outcome might have looked a lot different. Back in the day, when fights were longer and conditioning played an even bigger role, fighters with Ramos's style, those pressure-heavy, body-punching, walk-you-down types usually had the advantage. They wore their opponents out, mentally and physically. They didn't have to race the clock. They just kept grinding until you broke in a shorter 12-round format. Strategy and pacing matter more. And in that fight, Lubin played the strategy game better. But being outpointed is not the same as being outclassed. Ramos was still dangerous in every round, still pushing forward, still delivering the more damaging blows. That's why I look at him as almost undefeated. Not officially, of course, but in terms of how I rate him as a fighter, that loss doesn't tell me he's easy to beat. It tells me he ran into a strategic technician on the right night. Against Mosley Jr. However, the dynamics are completely different. Mosley Jr. doesn't have the same slickness or ring IQ style that Lubin brings. He's more straightforward, more upright, and more limited in the kinds of adjustments he can make mid. Ramos should be able to pressure him, corner him, and break him down the way he likes to. And let's not forget the mental side of things. Ramos is coming off that loss hungry. Fighters who are young and talented and who taste defeat earlier than expected often come back sharper and more focused. They train with a chip on their shoulder. They enter the ring with something to prove. Ramos knows that people questioned him after the Lubin fight. He knows the talk. And fighters with something to prove tend to fight with that extra layer of determination that can make a big difference. All of those reasons to get size, strength, ring experience, hunger after a loss make me see this fight as a very favorable one for Jesus, Ramos. Mosley Jr. will come to compete, but Ramos has too many advantages and too much forward momentum on his side. That's why I'm picking Jesus Ramos to win this matchup clearly and convincingly. So for that matchup, I'm taking Jesus Ramos den. We've got Erislandy Lara versus Juan Gonzalez, which is interesting for a different reason. Gonzalez is stepping in as a replacement opponent. I've watched him fight a few times. He's a tough, solid guy, but nothing that really jumps off the screen. He shouldn't be on the same level as a veteran like Lara. And Erislandy Lara, even at this later stage of his career, still has elite technical ability and carries real power. Ever since he slowed down a bit with age, the power has become even more noticeable. Even though Erislandy Lara has a lot of advantages going into this fight, age is always the big question mark. He's 42 years old, and once a fighter crosses 40, you never really know when their body might suddenly slow down. That's why this matchup is actually a great opportunity for LRA to keep his career going and add another win to his championship run. It's also a much better situation for him than what was originally planned. Before this replacement opponent came into the picture, Lara was supposed to face a fighter who had built a strong reputation, not just as a champion, but as one of the most avoided guys in the middleweight division. Janabek held multiple belts, making him a unified champion. And the scheduled fight between him and Lara was set to be a 3-belt unification massive event on paper. But when you looked closely at the matchup, the energy around it felt very different, to be honest. It seemed like Lara was being brought in as the older name, the respected veteran who would give Janabek credibility if he beat him. That's not to say Lara isn't capable, because he absolutely is, but when a fighter is 42 years old and stepping into the ring with a younger, fresher unified champion, most people assume it's more about showcasing the younger guy than giving the older fighter a real shot at winning. Lara still carries elite skill, but the narrative surrounding that matchup felt like he was being positioned as the experienced test, not the genuine threat. And then came the twist. Janabek tested positive for meldonium, a banned substance that immediately removed him from the fight. That completely changed the dynamic of Lara's situation. Instead of walking into what looked like an uphill battle against a dangerous younger champion, Lara suddenly found himself with a replacement opponent, a fighter who simply isn't on the same level as Johnny Bek. In a strange way, everything lined up in Lara's favor. Instead of going into the ring with a unified champion in his prime, he now gets to defend his title against someone with far less experience, far fewer accomplishments, and nowhere near the same danger level. It's almost like the boxing gods stepped in and said, "Hold on. This man has put too much into the sport to just be fed to the wolves." Because make no mistake, at 42, Lara is fighting not just opponents, but time itself. Every fight could be the one where age finally catches up. Every training camp demands more from his body. So when you take that into consideration, facing Janabek at this point in his career would have been one of the toughest challenges possible. A fast, hard-hitting, technically sharp fighter with youth on his side, that's a dangerous assignment for anyone, let alone a veteran nearing the end of his career. This new matchup, on the other hand, gives Lara a real chance to extend his run at the top. It gives him breathing room, an opportunity to showcase the skills he still has left without having to climb a mountain. He can rely on his ring IQ, his timing, his footwork, and the power that has actually become more noticeable as he's slowed down. So yes, when you look at how everything unfolded, it's clear that the situation turned out far better for Lara than it first appeared. What seemed like a brutal assignment against Janibek turned into a fight he is fully capable of winning, and winning well. Sometimes, boxing has a funny way of rearranging things, and in this case, everything aligned perfectly for Lara to keep his career going strong. So for this matchup, I'm confidently picking Arislandi Lara to beat Janibek's replacement, Johan Gonçalves, who simply isn't on Lara's level, even at this stage of Lara's career. Now let's talk about the co-main event, which has its own drama. We've got O'Shaquie Foster, who was supposed to defend his WBC 130-pound title against Stephen Fulton Jr., but Fulton came in 2 pounds overweight. And to me, that didn't feel like an accident. That felt like a strategic move, very slick, very intentional from whoever planned it, because here's what happened next. Instead of the actual world title, the WBC put the interim title on the line. And this is where things get interesting. Whoever wins, Foster or Fulton, will become the WBC interim champion at 130. And I'm picking Foster to win. Fulton looked heavy and uncomfortable even before the weight cut, and missing by 2 pounds tells me he likely wasn't disciplined in camp. But here's the bigger picture. If Foster wins and becomes interim champ, and then Shocker Stevenson beats Teofimo Lopez at Ibai Sancherwu, the WBC will almost certainly elevate Shocker to full world champion at lightweight. You know what that sets up? A potential unification fight with Gervonta Davis for the WBA belt. This is classic boxing politics, slick moves, shifting titles, strategic matchmaking, and with Turki Alashik making waves, Crawford refusing WBC fees, and Shocker moving up. The pieces are being arranged very carefully. What the WBC and PBC seem to be doing here is setting themselves up to control another belt at 130 and 135 pounds. Now, it's still unclear what happens if Foster loses. Does he keep his regular WBC belt while Fulton gets the interim title? That part isn't totally clear, but either way, the positioning is definitely intentional. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how all of that plays out. I just figured you'd want to know that little detail because it could have a big impact down the line. Now, let's move to the main event. For the headline fight, I'm picking Pitbull Cruz to win by decision over Lamont Roach. When I watched their face, what stood out to me was how similar they are in size, but also how much pressure Cruz brings. I think Cruz is going to force Roach into fighting at a pace he isn't used to. Over the course of the night, that pressure is going to add up. I see Cruz ripping to the body, trapping Roach on the ropes, and landing big overhand rights. Even if he doesn't get a knockout, the constant activity and aggression will likely be enough to secure him the decision. And we can't ignore the setting. This fight is happening in San Antonio, Texas, where the crowd is packed with fans who love Pitbull Cruz. Every punch he throws is going to get a loud reaction, and that energy can definitely influence the momentum of a fight. Now, to be fair, PBC cards don't usually have the same level of questionable judging that we see with some other promotions. But still, don't be shocked if the hometown energy helps Cruz a bit on the scorecards. Those are my picks for the whole card. We'll be streaming live during the fights, and we'll go live again tomorrow morning to talk about how right or wrong I was. And of course, you all can share your predictions too. That's my breakdown. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm out. Deuces.